Hello, this is Bad Vibes. Today's video is on those security guards that are supposed to protect you. Some do, but what happens when they don't? Joining me today is the Dark Narrator. His channel link will be in the description. Please sub to him if you enjoy his narrations. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. So I'm not the best at writing or describing things, but something happened to me 3 days ago, and it's been on my mind non-stop. I've had nightmares a lot. I'm going away for 5 months this summer to work in Greece, same thing I did last year. But this time, it's not as much of a last-minute decision, so I planned ahead to take a few family members away on a low-budget British caravan holiday, so we could spend some time together before I leave. I booked it the week for Friday to Friday. The first few days were good, celebrating Wales winning the Grand Slam in rugby. Monday was much the same. We played bingo in the on-site clubhouse, and this is when I noticed a member of their security team. He looked quite attractive from a distance. I like beards, glasses, so I say to my mother, "Oh, he's nice," and we laughed. A bit later, he approached our table and chatted with us for a little bit about general things going on-site and his job. He shook my hand and introduced himself. He then stood by our table on and off all night trying to engage in general conversation. He did make excessive eye contact with me, which was weird, so that's why I thought I was getting such bad anxiety being around him, because he seemed otherwise normal. When we were leaving, he was on duty in the front of the clubhouse. We walked past him and said bye. He said something along the lines of, "Oh, don't go. I've got 2 days off and won't be able to see you." Which I thought was weird because we just met him and had nothing but basic conversation. My mom thought I liked him, so she said she was going to catch up to my dad and let me talk to him. He looked like he was about to say something, but I wasn't interested in being alone with him, so I said, "Can't believe she left me behind. See ya." I could feel him watching me through the dark car park. Again, anxiety. 2 days went by and things were normal, but on the day that he came back for duty, Wednesday, he noticed us straight away and walked over. He winked at me and stood right next to me, putting his elbows on the table, tried to chat away with me, a bit too close to my face. I shrugged it off and went to go play with my nephew in the arcade bowling machine. I could see him out of the corner of my eye watching me from behind. Again, I got really bad anxiety. I went back to my parents' table, and he would walk by every few minutes, looking at me each time. I couldn't stand the anxious feeling in my gut, so I waited until he was gone and made an excuse and went back to the caravan alone. My parents arrived back a few hours later and told me he kept stopping by asking about me and asking where I was and if he needed to check on me. He gave my mother a piece of paper with his number on it to give to me. I was embarrassed by that and joked with my mother, like who tries to get someone's mom to be their wingwoman. Thursday was our last day. I decided not to go out because I felt uncomfortable going there now after being watched and throwing his number in a bin. But my parents went elsewhere, so I stayed packing and babysitting my nephew. This is where I got really freaked out. He somehow found my number and began sending me messages on WhatsApp. I replied at first, being polite, and mentioned that I was packing and going home. He started to get a little flirty, so I put the phone on silent and went to bed. My mom had her window and curtains wide open. My dad had fallen asleep on the couch watching TV with my nephew, and I was in the single room alone. I woke up later because I heard rustling noises outside. I froze for a second, but I could hear movement outside by my window. I looked through the teeny gap, and I saw him standing there looking around, and I genuinely thought I was going to have a heart attack. I've never been paralyzed with fear before. I felt like I needed to cough, but I was so terrified to make a sound. I looked at my phone and it was 3:30. I saw a bunch of WhatsApp notifications. I was too scared to open them, so I read a bit from the notification bubble. He told me he knew where I was, and he wanted me to dangle myself out the window for him to play with, along with sending me pictures of himself naked, numerous calls and texts, and all while outside my window. I laid there for about 2 hours, too afraid to move. I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I remember was my mom waking me up, saying that she had just opened the curtains in the living room and saw him standing right outside. This was 9 a.m., 6 hours later. I never felt so scared in my life. We packed up and got ready to leave. By the time we were about to go, he had gone. I ran to my car with my hood up, paranoid that he would stop us. My parents thought it was really weird for him being out there, but I never told them about all the messages, so they didn't know why I was being so weird. I felt so sick waiting for my dad to start the engine, because I didn't know where he had gone, or if he was still watching. If he had found out my number and caravan, and had seen us in my dad's car with the license plate, what else could he have found out? I have not mentioned this to anyone, because I really can't handle it right now. I feel violated in a way, although I don't know how to describe it. So I'm a female, 23 now, but in this story I was 21 with a 4-month-old baby. I'm about 5'9", a bit overweight, and I have social anxiety around new people. I went with my sister to her work. She was 26 and 5 feet tall. She worked at a very nice restaurant in a shopping center, and we went straight there for a 6 p.m. start after being in the city all day collecting money for a cat rescue. I'm just chilling out, eating food and binging on Reddit when I decided I wanted a smoke. I know, bad habit. So I let my sister know I'm going out to the car park to have a smoke as she passes through the dining area. The car was only about 70 meters away from the restaurant, having good lighting, and because it was so late, I could hang around near the doors. This is where it gets creepy. The security guard was doing his rounds, at about my height, and Indian. He decides to check on me. That's cool, man. I'm just having a smoke. The conversation goes like this. How are you doing? You okay? I'm pretty good. I'm just waiting for my sister to get off work. Good. Your baby? Very cute baby. I have 4 at home. You got a husband? Yes, he's my baby. That's good. I have a fiance, which was a complete lie. I was 100% single, but he was already making me anxious. I could be husband. I look after baby for you. I look after you. No thanks. I'm sure your wife wouldn't appreciate that. No. Wife loves baby. Wife will love you. You come home with me? Finally, I finished my smoke and moved further away from him each second. No thanks. I'm good now. He follows me inside. I go all around the mostly closed shopping center, hoping that I would lose him in Kohl's. I lost him for about 5 seconds, but Kohl's shut down for the night. The only place left open was my sister's work, so I went back there even though I didn't want him to know where I was. As I was about to walk into the restaurant, I saw him coming up the escalator. He was still watching me. I take the last 2 steps towards the hostess, who happens to be the owner's daughter, and told her what was going on. At this point, the security guard was standing in front of the restaurant, still staring at me. The hostess takes me into a semi-secluded booth and goes to talk to her dad about the situation. As she's gone, the creepy security guard comes into the dining area, searches for me, and then comes and sits in my booth, way too close to me and my child. How are you? I want to ravish a pretty woman. You will be the mother of my babies. We will make cute babies. At this point, it was very clear that I was uncomfortable, and he still made it worse. Don't worry. I protect you and the baby. He reaches across the table with one hand now. The other hand is reaching towards my baby. I'm frozen. I didn't care about the hand near me. I was watching the other one. No one touches my baby. I'm about to snap, full mama bear mode, when the owner, 40-ish to 50 years old, 6 feet tall, big wide build, of the restaurant steps in, asking if there's a problem. Is there a problem? No problem. Just talking with my lovely lady. This is a customer. Has she done something wrong? No, never. She's my lady, see? We're gonna get married. And then he grins creepily, the silent warning for me to play along etched in his face. Finding comfort in the restaurant owner's presence, I said, please leave me alone. I just want to eat my dinner. Haha, funny lady. See, we joke. I don't know you. Please leave me alone. She says she wants you to leave now. She's just messing. She loved me. I've been waiting for you, my pretty lady. He leaves at that point. The restaurant owner makes sure I'm okay and moves me to the employee break room and then fills my sister in. 2 hours later, and my sister has finished her shift, we pack up and head out to the car. The security guard appears out of nowhere. He was actually waiting for me. I take pretty lady and baby home now. Come, pretty lady, we go home. The restaurant owner, like an angel, steps out of his car right behind the security guard and says, she's going home with her sister. No, pretty lady mine. She come home with me. Get in the car, I'll take care of this. So we get in the car and go home. Find out that the next day from my sister that her boss had physically restrained the security guard because he went to go grab my arm as I was getting in the car. He then got him fired and permanently banned from the shopping center. About 4 years ago, I worked as a laundress. I worked 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. and would often work alone. We usually have a security guard posted near the parking lot. They would carry a radio and pepper spray, and later in the day, they would patrol the building. A new guy started, and I never saw him watching over the parking lot when I would come in each morning. Throughout my shift, he would come into my laundry room. He was talkative, but I noticed that he would look at my body a lot when he thought I wouldn't notice. One day I came into work and started putting my stuff away and getting ready to begin. I hadn't turned on all the lights yet, so there was parts of the room I couldn't see. Suddenly, I hear the radio static from the corner of the room and see a red radio light. I turn on the lights and the new guy is in the corner of the room, hiding and watching me. When I asked him what he was doing there, he said he was just hanging out and started laughing. It was obvious he was waiting for me. He ended up doing this so often that I got used to it. I came in early one day and was working one of our smaller areas. He came into the smaller room and was talking to me. He is a big guy, so I couldn't see around him. He was just talking to me, but I couldn't move or leave the room because he blocked the door. He asked me why I came in early that day, and I told him it's because I had to leave early later. He told me I was required to tell him all my hours, so he would always know where I was. He was leaning over me, and I felt like he was trying to make me upset. I had a horrible feeling in my stomach that he was about to try something, so I pushed past him and called my supervisor. My supervisor said he would keep an eye on him. I told him that I had a bad feeling about this guy and that I needed to leave for the day. The next day he was fired. Apparently, he wasn't at the guard tower at the start of his shift because he would spend the mornings in the woods near the parking lot area, recording girls walking in for their shifts each morning. They found a huge collection of soda cans and coffee cups in his locker that he admitted later that he has drug out from various trash bins around where the girls worked that were once used by the girls. His wife shortly left him and took full custody of their newborn baby.
This happened a few months ago, and I didn't realize how weird it was until I told my boyfriend about it a few months later. At my college, our student IDs are pretty much essential to have. They get you into all of the academic buildings and get you all your food on the meal plan. I had lost mine and was forced to get a new one. I went to the security desk and told the security guard that I had lost my ID and I needed a new one made. He said, "No problem. Just come with me while I print you a new one." He was older. If I had to guess, I would say about 65, but in very good shape. Definitely over 6 feet, and you can tell he was attractive when he was younger. He had curly gray hair, very well kept, and ice blue eyes. We went back to the security room in the main student commons building. It was a room that was a little ways back, but still had a good amount of foot traffic going by it. I walked in and sat on the couch that was across from the desk. When we walked in, he closed the door. He went on the computer at the desk and asked me all of my information, student ID number, name, birthday, and class year. When he pulled up my account, he saw my picture that is used for my ID. He asked me if I wanted a new picture taken for the new ID, and I said, "No, I'm good," because I don't like my picture taken. But I also looked a mess because I wasn't expecting to need a new picture taken. He then said, "Well, your picture is very good. You look pretty. Most are bad." I laughed and said thank you, and told him I was a senior in high school and got that taken at orientation almost 3 years ago. And he said, "Well, you must have always been pretty." I started to feel weird then, but it's a security officer at my college, and it's known for having great security. He then said that the computer wasn't letting him print one without taking a new picture since it was so old. He told me, "If you need to get a new ID, it makes you get a new picture after 2 years because people can change in looks, and we need to make sure it's you, and have good confirmation." Okay, you just asked me if I wanted a new one, but are now telling me I need a new one. I found this weird because I thought if that was the case, he would have known that in the beginning. But again, he's a security officer and I need this stupid ID. I said okay, and he said he would set everything up. He went into a closet within the security room and got out a camera on a tripod and told me to stand up against the wall. I did and smiled awkwardly. He told me I needed to take my hair out of the bun because the hair needed to be down for the ID picture. Okay, but I didn't think much of this either, as I had never seen a girl's ID without their hair down, which I now realize is just a preference. He took a picture and said my eyes were closed. I laughed because my eyes are closed in 9 out of 10 pictures that I take. Another reason I don't like my picture taken. He said, "It's fine, I don't mind taking a couple." He then came over and told me my hair looked awkward, so he was just going to fix it for me, so I liked the picture better. He fixed my hair and pulled my head back, and I said, "It's good, I really don't care, no one looks at it." He rolled his eyes and said, "Whatever, it's your picture, but it would look better if I fixed it." Again, I said, "It's fine, don't worry," just trying to be polite. After the next picture, I saw a clock on the wall and realized I only had 10 minutes before the next class. I said, "You can just use whatever one I don't have my eyes closed in because I have class in 10 minutes, so I kinda have to go." He said, "Your professor isn't going to get mad if you say you were getting an ID from security and it took a while." At this point, I realized I had been there for over 20 minutes, and I wasn't nervous but more so sick of being there and wanted out. He then told me they take a few minutes to print and should just wait on the couch. He then talked to me asking me what my major is, if I have a boyfriend. I do, so I said yes. He asked how long we had been dating and then said, "Oh, you know guys in college are no good. They'll just waste your time. You should break up with them and find someone older and more mature." Whatever, dude. Just give me my ID. I didn't respond to that and just said, "Okay, well, I'm gonna go because I can't be late for class, so I would be able to just pick it up at the desk after class?" He huffed and then said, "What a rush you're in. But it should be ready now, hold on." He then went from the desk to the back of the room where the printer was and grabbed my ID. He said, "Wow, the picture is even better. I'm a pretty good photographer if I do say so myself," and winked. He kept holding the ID and not handing it to me. I was annoyed at this point, but I'm really bad at being assertive. I said, "I'm sorry, but I really have to go." And he laughed and said, Okay. I would think a senior wouldn't be nervous about being a little late," and then handed me the ID. I basically snatched it out of his hands and he said, "Well, I'll walk you out because you aren't supposed to be back here without a security guard. I wouldn't want you getting in trouble." I'm thinking, oh my god, just let me go. So he walked me out and I said thanks and basically ran out of the building. I'm not gonna lie, I thought he was weird and flirty, but I never needed to get an ID made before, so I just thought that's how the process was, and that he was just a little too flirty with the situation. So I never said anything to anyone. With 3 weeks left to school, I somehow managed to lose my ID. I had been borrowing my boyfriend's because I was super busy at the end of the year and just thought, I really don't have a half hour to spare to get a new ID. Finally, my boyfriend got annoyed with me using his meal plan and always having his ID, and he said, "You need to go get a new one. It takes like 5 minutes tops." I said, "No, it doesn't. It took like a half hour. I don't have time for that." He asked me what the hell I was talking about, and I told him what had happened. He said, "No, that is not at all okay. You need to report that." I said I didn't care enough to do that, but I asked him to come with me to get a new ID. When I went to get a new one, it was a different security guard, and he said, "Yeah, no problem, just wait here, I'll be back in a minute." Not even 5 minutes later, he was back with a new one made. I told him what had happened last time, and he looked very concerned. He asked who the security guard was. I didn't know his name, but I described him. He gave me the name in the office of the head security guard and told him he would call and tell them I was coming over. I went and talked to the head security officer, and he told me what happened was not at all protocol, and he looked in the system and saw over 30 pictures of me taken. He reported it to the higher-ups. I had to go in and speak to a group of 3 people in administration, and they let me know that he was fired and would not be allowed on campus again, and to notify them if I see him. I know it doesn't sound that crazy like most of the stories on here, and I really didn't feel like I was in danger, but I think I was too naive to feel it at the time. I trusted every security guard, but I have no idea what his intentions were.
I love this sub and wanted to share a recent set of encounters I've had with my apartment complex security guard. I'm feeling a little concerned that I overreacted or took things out of context. I moved into a large studio apartment complex a few months ago. I'm a single female with a 2-year-old daughter. My sister and a few of her friends came over about 3 weeks ago to hang out. We had some beers and played Cards Against Humanity. My studio has an enclosed patio with a door-sized opening that doesn't have a gate or door. Since my child was sleeping, I had everyone chill outside on the patio. We were having a great time, joking, talking, and listening to low music when the security guard entered my patio. "Hi there, are we being too loud? Has someone placed a complaint?" No, you guys are fine. Just doing my rounds." He lingered for a minute more, then strolled out into the night. We continued our activities and really didn't give him a second thought. He returned 25 minutes later, right after most of the group had left. Only my sister, her friend Cody, and I remained. He was an overweight, late 40s, early 50-year-old male, and wore glasses. He strolls onto my patio once again, strikes up a conversation. We learned that he was a retired cop that had to quit the force after suffering a heart attack on duty. He states that he had to undergo a quintuple bypass surgery, and after recovery, he started night security jobs. I felt sorry for him because of his medical history and sat there to listen to him for a while. He must have stayed there for 30 minutes before my sister got uncomfortable and loudly announced that we were going to bed. He bid us a good night and left. Once inside, my sister said that she didn't like the way he was looking at me and thought that he took a liking to me. I initially told her that she was reading too much into it, and the dude was just lonely and had a long shift ahead. A week and a half later, my sister is visiting again, and we are sitting inside my place, talking. My studio has a black screen door, which is visible to see through, and a wood door. I had the screen locked, and the wood door open to let some air in. My sister is talking to me, and I have a sensation of someone looking at me, so I glance up. The security guard is at the doorway of my patio, staring. I say hello and he jerks forward, as if expecting an invitation in or something. But I turn my attention back to my sister, and when I glance back again, he is gone. This week on Tuesday, I took a shower and threw on my red silk Japanese-style robe. I was washing dishes for about 25 minutes and had poured a glass of wine. I turned from the kitchen and sit on my couch, and I let out a scream. The security guard is almost pressed up against the screen door and staring straight at me through a foot-long crack of the wood door. I was startled and shaken, but the first thing I did was to make sure my robe wasn't exposing me. Then I ran up to the screen. "You scared me." He had no emotion and no apology. "I'm just doing my rounds." My scalp is crawling and I'm still shaky. "Okay, well, I'm going to bed now." He is still right up next to the screen door, all the way in my patio, and turns and looks at my beast cruiser parked against the wall. "Oh, you have a bike? You should put it inside because someone could take it." "Yeah, I'll get to it." I pretty much slammed the door shut and locked the door. I sit down with my wine and calm my nerves. I was shaken, but I wasn't sure if he was really being a creeper or just a lonely individual that was looking for someone that had expressed interest. After a debate with my friend's sister, I contacted the property manager. I was actually surprised at how quickly it escalated. They took my verbal incident report over the phone and just informed me today that the guy had been fired. The property manager told me to call the police if I see him on the premises again. I work in a jewelry store in a small mall somewhere remote in Canada. It's a fun job. I love my coworkers, love the customers, and love the fixed schedule working in the mall gives me. It's nice to know that I'll be off at 6 p.m. every night and gives me plenty of time to socialize and study outside of work. The mall is a small loop, probably about 50 stores operating on average. They employ a staff of 30 people to keep the mall operating. Half of the staff works in admin, and another 15 or so works security. As a regular 40-hour-a-week employee, I've had my fair share of interaction with security. Having them escort me to the bus stop on an occasional night inventory had me working in late, or calling them into the store to deal with an irate customer. Over the years, I became good acquaintances with a few of the security guards. My favorites were Will, April, and Mark. Will was the friendliest. He would pop his head into the store and say good morning to me when I'm opening. April was the most by the book security guard. She usually helped me deal with difficult customers. Mark was one of the evening security guards, so my only interaction with him was to escort me late at night to the bus stop, during which he was quiet but polite. A schedule shuffle last year put Will on parking lot patrols, April mostly on the evening shift, and put Mark on day duty. Not the end of the world, just kinda sucked that I would no longer have friendly conversations with Will as I opened the store, and not having badass April around to step in when customers were unruly. Mark was a lot more quiet than his two counterparts, and just wasn't quite as friendly. I didn't interact with him much for the first few months after this new schedule started. I'd give him a smile as he walked by my store, and had him help me out a few times with shoplifters, but beyond that, nada. No great friendship blossoming out of the schedule rotation. About 2 months after the schedules had changed, I had a bad encounter with Mark. I was walking through one of the mall staff hallways to take a washroom break. Mark happened to be just ahead of me and was also going to the washroom. When we reached the doors, he looked me up and down, and then said, "This is gonna be too hard." I had got a bit of a chill when he said that, but assumed that there was an issue in the men's washroom. Someone passed out in the stall or something. So I asked him, "Oh no, why?" Because I'm nosy and was excited to have a bit of mall gossip to share with my coworkers. He got a cold, distant look in his eye and said, "My doctor advised against heavy lifting," and then winked at me. I ran into the girls' washroom and texted my manager. I was freaking out about what he just said, knowing full well what he meant. Mark is a 45-year-old man with graying hair and a bit of a beer gut. He stands about 6 feet tall, and I'm a teeny 5'7" girl who was 25 at the time of this incident. It creeped me out so much that I reported it to April, my next shift, who promised that she would handle it. I stopped seeing Mark during patrols and assumed he had been switched back to day shifts. For about 2 weeks, I heard nothing from him or any of the other security guards. I was just about to end my shift one evening, with about 15 minutes left before we closed the doors for the day. I hear someone enter my store, and I look up, and Mark's walking towards me with just a pure look of hate in his face. I wasn't working alone, so I stepped into the back room to avoid dealing with him. It didn't work. Mark threw the door to my back room open and stood there screaming his lungs out at me. How it was my fault that he lost his job, how I'd ruined his life, and how I was gonna pay for my mistake. He viewed the sexual comment as a joke and thought that I was a bitch straight from hell for reporting him. He screamed for a few minutes, then the second he paused for a breath, I calmly told him to get the fuck out of my store because I was calling the cops and security. He ran out of the store, and a moment later Will sprinted in. He just screamed at me, "Where the fuck did he go?" And I just pointed and started crying. I was shaking from our confrontation, and I gave my statement to the police and the mall security. Mark had been fired after my report, but security was adamant that it wasn't my fault. Mark had racked up a bunch of complaints over his years, and it was just a straw that broke the camel's back. He was banned from the mall the day he got fired, and criminally trespassed when he came in to scream at me. Authorities issued a warrant for him, and it took weeks for him to reappear and be arrested. During those weeks, I was very scared. Mark knew what bus I took. Mark knew my work schedule. Mark hated me. Every time I turned a corner, I was scared that he would be there. I believe he's out of jail now, but I hope I never see Mark again.
A long time ago, but a similar post made me think of this horrific experience I had in my early 20s. My friend and I went into JCPenney's for her to exchange a package of onesies for her infant daughter. We both had our toddler son sitting facing each other in a tandem stroller. After being in the store for a few minutes, they both started tugging back and forth on the package of onesies. I grabbed the package from them and threw it into the compartment under the stroller, ending the game of tug of war. Friend did a little more shopping, boys did some more fighting and whining. She exchanged the onesies and cashed out the rest of her items. We left that store, got lunch in the food court, let the babies play in the play place, and grabbed coffee, ready to head out. As we received our coffees, a security officer approaches me and asks me what I stole. Completely dumbfounded, I tell him I didn't steal anything. He tells me he has me on video stealing, and if I confess, he'll go easy. I tell him he's wrong, he can check my purse as I have nothing. He immediately pulls the package of onesies from the bottom of the stroller. Amidst our toddler screaming, she didn't realize I put them down there, so she grabbed another package. I didn't pay attention because she bought other things, and I was trying to keep the boys from poking each other in the eyes. I tell the security guard it wasn't intentional, and explain how the boys were grabbing on it, to which led to me throwing it to the bottom of the stroller. He goes on a rant on how he's heard every excuse in the book, and I'm just making it worse for myself. So I bring up the timeline and ask, why if I intended to steal, would I stay for lunch, let the kids play, and calmly sit down to have a coffee? My friend also confirms that she has the infant daughter, and yes, the boys were annoying each other during our shopping trip. This apparently pissed the security guard off, because he went into full-on commando mode, pulling me by the arm, back to JCPenney's and into the security room. We get inside and I urge him to watch the security tape again, figuring he'll see the babies fussing and understanding the confusion. He leaves me in the room for 45 minutes, to which I figure he had to have seen the babies fussing and fighting. Nope. He came back in and calls me a liar. He says it clearly showed me shoplifting, and he's going to call the cops. I'm frustrated but agree to the cops being called, because I figure they'll see the tapes and understand the mistake. He didn't like that either. He tells me that once the cops get involved, that he is required to call Child Protective Services, which will immediately open a case, and that they will take my son in custody until I have a court date. Keep in mind I'm 23 at the time, and have never been in a situation like this before, so I believed his lying ass. I break down crying, telling the guy that I'm being honest, I'm not a thief, I have a clean record, why would I steal clothes for a child that isn't mine? He was cold. Told me the most innocent looking people are the ones who steal. He's heard every excuse and lie you can think of, and I have 3 minutes to confess before he calls the cops and has my son taken away from me. I still insisted my innocence, because I was, and begged for a manager. Bear in mind, my friend was outside the whole time with my son and hers, unbothered other than worrying about me. Dickhead security guard leaves and comes back 10 minutes later. No manager, but with a paper, which is basically a generic written confession, saying I shoplifted in the amount of $6.99, literally under $10, and that I agreed to pay restocking fees, loss and prevention fees, and to not enter the store for 3 years. Now I'm hysterically crying, pleading with him that I did nothing wrong. I'm not a shoplifter, the only thing I did was exercise poor judgment by not specifying to my friend that the onesies were on the bottom. He tells me he has no sympathy for thieves and liars, and already called the cops and they're on their way to arrest me and take my son, unless I sign the paper. So I panic, quickly sign the form, to which he releases me. I tell my friend to hightail it out of the mall ASAP. After telling the story to her in the car, and other people later, I found out that it was all bullshit. The security guard lied and manipulated me, and should have lost his job for that. But he was so far in my head that I didn't want to revisit the situation for even a second. It's been over a decade since this happened, and I still get anxiety just thinking about it. So, rookie mall security guard, let's not meet again.
Okay, so this happened 20 years ago, which means I was probably around 8 or 9. My mom used to work at a medical center for athletes, and I'd sometimes go with her to work because they had a little park and a basketball court. Sometimes I'd go with my cousins, and sometimes I'd go with Beth. Beth was the daughter of a lady that helped my grandmother keep the house in order, and she often came around to hang out, even though she was 6 or 7 years older than me. So that afternoon, we went to my mom's work, and Beth and I hung out in the park. At some point, we were approached by a security guard. He asked us who we were because it was a public facility. People of all sorts came and went, so I didn't think him asking us that was weird. You know, maybe he was just asking for security reasons. I don't know. So we told him. He proceeds to tell us that we were very pretty and so well behaved, which was whatever. I didn't think too much about it, but I could tell by the look on Beth's face something was off. Probably noticing Beth was feeling uneasy, he started addressing me directly, telling me that he had some toys and games at his booth and that he would love to show them to me. Now, my mom always told me about stranger danger and all that, but I thought, hey, this dude works here. He knows my mom. He wouldn't do anything to harm me, right? So my first instinct was to say, yeah, okay. Beth was having none of it though. She grabbed my arm, positioned herself between us and said, no thank you. I remember frowning and asking why not, which the guy parroted, and Beth just said, her mom is waiting for us and we should be going now, and probably pulled me away towards my mom's building. I asked her, why not, again as we walked, but she told me that man was a bad man. It wasn't until I was about 16 and my mom came home from work saying that the security guard had been arrested for harassing or sexually abusing, I'm not sure, one of the female athletes, that I remembered what happened and finally understood. Thank God for Beth. I used to be a security officer at a homeless shelter earlier this year. I worked there for almost 5 months before leaving. I have tons of creepy and scary stories from my time there. So back in March, I was at work doing what I needed to do. On the ground floor was a daytime only homeless shelter, and on the top was a government homeless outreach office. This is who my contact was through, but I had to keep the entire building secure, even though the shelter was a different organization. The government office was a mental health branch, so it wasn't uncommon for crazy people to, well, act crazy. This particular day, an individual comes in to pick up their medication. The man took their medication and walked over to the couch and sits there in the office. After sitting down, the guy starts digging through his backpack, pulls out a bag full of white pills. This instantly catches my attention. He grabs his pocket knife, doesn't open the blade, but smashes 3 or 4 pills and uses his hand to make 3 lines, then snorts the dust up. What remained he swept off the table. This is now considered to be an acting hostile and potentially illegal, so I walk over to him and start trying to make him leave. He keeps telling me, "I gotta take my meds." I inform him that he needs to leave, then he says out loud without looking at me, "I got a suppressed 9mm in my bag that will make you and that bitch shut up." Alarm bells start ringing. I know that I have a potential active shooter scenario in my hands, and I'm an unarmed officer. I calmly walk backwards to the receptionist and whisper to her to get the other client up and call 911 and lock herself in the exam room and do not open the door. She does this, as well as informing the other caseworker of the situation, and they lock and barricade the doors. There are cameras in the lobby, so this is all recorded and turned over to the police. After many other attempts to get this man to leave and informing him that the police were called and en route, he gets up, gets in my face, and tells me quietly, "I'm coming back for you one day," and then storms out. The police arrive 5 minutes later and they examine the footage. They put out an APB on the man and take samples of the powder on the table. A few days later they informed me that they found the man with no guns and no drugs. The powder turned out to be antipsychotic medicine. He had alleged that he lost the bottle they came in. Nothing bad happened, but still, for a 19-year-old unarmed security guard, this scared the shit out of me.